Joining us now, we have Jaswant Kaur from the Punjab Documentation and Advocacy Project at Missing Punjabis. And she's here to talk to us about a documentary which has uncovered the over decades of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings and mass secret cremations that have been taking place in Punjab. Now, the film is called Punjab Disappeared, and it's been shown in the Waterman's Centre in Brentford, in Stratford Circus in East London, but across the country and international to sold out audiences. And this particular documentary is making a lot of waves within the Punjabi community, but also outside of the Punjabi community as well. And it's really focusing on the thousands of people, mainly young Sikh men and young Sikh boys, that have essentially just disappeared after allegedly being abducted and murdered by authorities. So to really give us more on what this is all about and to put it into context, big thanks to human rights lawyer Jaswant Kaur for joining us. Thanks for joining us today, Jaswant.
Thank you.
You just told us off air you're a Londoner, born and brought up here in London. Mm-hmm. However, 6+ years ago, you moved out to Delhi solely for this project. Put it into context of exactly what's happening and why you actually picked everything up and moved to Delhi in India because of what was happening there to the Punjabi community.
So 10 years ago, myself and my husband, who's a barrister in the UK, another Londoner who's not here today, went to India to work with an organisation called the Human Rights Law Network. And they are one of the largest NGOs in India, and they deal with all types of very interesting cases, everything from minority rights, women's rights, children's rights across the board. And we arrived there not really thinking that we'd work particularly on Punjab. And when we got there, their lawyer there, Colin Gonsalves, said, actually, I'm dealing with the end cases of Bhai Jaswant Singh Kalra. And Jaswant Singh Kalra was a human rights activist in Punjab who uncovered secret cremations. So what he was able to uncover was that police and security forces would pick up, like you were saying, mostly young Sikh men, and they would be shown in what human rights organisations call fake encounters, and they would then be cremated secretly. And when they were cremated, they'd be cremated as unclaimed and unidentified. Now, if your listeners have any knowledge of Punjab itself, you have very few people who are unclaimed and unidentified, because in villages everyone knows each other.
Everyone knows, yeah.
There's no such, you'll maybe come across maybe in a year a handful of cases where someone's travelled in and they've died because they're ill or it's cold or what have you. But what he uncovered in just 3 cremation grounds in Amritsar were over 2,097 bodies of young people who were brought in and secretly cremated, and as unclaimed and unidentified. And in 1995, after he went public with this, and in fact he even spent some time here in London, in Slough, for 2 years, he went public with this, and he himself was disappeared in 1995. He lived in Amritsar, and he was washing his car outside his drive, and he had a journalist friend waiting for him in the house, and he said, I'll be with you in a minute, let me just finish off. And in those few moments, plainclothes security service personnel came and kidnapped him, and he was never seen again. So that's the background of the human rights work that had happened in Punjab up until 95. After 95, due to this disappearance and abduction, going, and the wider community became much wider. It became a much wider issue. You have a human rights activist who's uncovered something, and he's then kidnapped himself and made to disappear. It went international. He spent some time, like I said, in England. He'd interacted with politicians here and politicians in Canada, and he'd gone back to Punjab after spending time here. So it became an international issue, and we saw a big, almost a large drop in the disappearances after Bhai Jaswant Singh Kalra.
So when we look at these alleged at the moment accusations and the documentary, what during the course of the documentary, did you get any of the authorities or the powers that be within these areas, these districts, coming forward and giving their versions of what they believe to be happening at the moment? or did they decline your invitation?
So our film focuses a lot on the families that continue their legal cases. In Jaswant Kaur's case, for example, they were convictions. So it's not alleged. Everyone, the courts have accepted.
Ruled against it.
Yes,
right,
that people. He was abducted, and there are people who served a certain amount of years.
So this has been a closed case now, and we have a verdict on this case.
On the Kaur, Jaswant Kaur, but the cases he uncovered,
still ongoing.
Are still ongoing, and those 2097 cases were the initial documentation that happened, and he estimated that there were 25,000 young people who were cremated, secretly cremated in this fashion. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court. After Jaswant Kaur, there was a long period, as you can imagine, of, while there were some organizations that did documentation work in Punjab, but obviously when you have such an iconic figure like himself being abducted, the environment was so kind of fearful and dangerous that for a long time, while there were organizations documenting cases, it was a very slow process.
Okay.
And so as we were on the end, and when we went 10 years ago, that case was still ongoing, and those families were still trying to be identified by the National Human Rights Commission. We became involved in that. We were sort of, when we were asked, do you know who Jaswant Kaur is, and of course, a lot of people from the Punjabi Sikh community and even outside, know of him. And we felt very fortunate to be able to do that work. And that then led us to going into villages in Punjab. And we actually found that there has been such an under-documentation of disappearances.
My big question to you, for anyone who's tuning into the show, and of course it's important to stress that there are many human rights violations that happen across the world, and we can't talk about every single one. Why this? Why now? Is my question to you. So why, if you're saying at the moment it's undocumented of 25,000 young Sikh males that have been cremated and abducted, why is this happening? But why you as a Londoner have chosen to take on this particular cause, to in fact move, to leave the country that you've been born in and to go to essentially an alien country where the laws are very different, as a woman as well. And we know about the human injustices that take place in India to women. For you to decide then actually this is the cause I'm going to take up. So firstly, what are the reasons from your understanding that it's happening in India, and why did you decide to move there?
So I'm a human rights advocate. I've always, my whole professional life has been human rights documentation or human rights work. And I've worked in countries like, documenting cases in Sudan and other places. So my whole background was always this way inclined. And then when I had the opportunity to go to India, it just felt such a natural process to be able to go into Punjab. I understand the language, I understand somewhat the background and the culture, and to be able to go in and do that documentation with a skill set I already had. And as I explained, my other half is a barrister. So we both went in knowing that we had a particular skill set, and you have an understanding of a community, you understand the language, and then you think, okay, this is something where we, like my other half will say, for example, that there's a lot of good human rights barristers in the UK. There's no, if there's a case, you will find someone. But in countries like India, human rights advocates, while there are some fantastic ones, it is, a lot more work. And for us, it's such a satisfying process to be able to...
Are you not fearful of your life? Is your family not sat here worried about what could happen to you?
So the interesting thing is that we align ourselves very closely with sort of human rights organizations in India who do fantastic work. And sometimes we sit abroad and we maybe don't understand the grassroots reality. And the reality is there's organizations like the PUCL, People's Union for Civil Liberties, who've been around for 50, 60 years, the Human Rights Law Network, and they do this kind of work. For example, Human Rights Law Network is currently doing a case from Manipur, which is similar to Punjab, 1,500 cases of disappearances. So this work does go on in India. And we, going in, we were quite, right from the beginning, we aligned ourselves with sort of credible human rights organizations that do incredible work out there, and also to be very transparent with our work.
And when you look at the change of the politics in India and the Narendra Modi's India right now in his second term, with the overwhelming confidence that the country has in him and for him to keep governing, has it made your work easier or harder under the Modi, India that we see?
See, interestingly, the cases that we're covering are from 1984 to 1995. And most political parties that have come in have used this as a political football for many, many years. So in some ways, we very much stayed out of any politics. And it's natural for that to be the case when you have cases that have been, are up until 1995. So yes, I mean, there is ongoing issues in India, ongoing human rights issues. Our film covers Punjab, but we also look at Manipur, we look at Kashmir, and we look at Chhattisgarh.
Right.
And those are places where these types of human rights violations are ongoing. And also, actually interesting, our film also covers non-Sikhs. So in Punjab, when you have a system where you are, the police are rewarded by giving promotions and by giving bounties for particular types of killings, what you'll find is the machinery becomes such that anybody can be devoured by that machinery.
Right.
And we found that while, yes, the majority were Sikh, there were also other communities. Actually, no community remained untouched.
If someone wants further information about the film, as we've said, you've already had sold out screenings across the country, and particularly here in London. And there's, I understand, quite a demand for people who are saying we want to see the film, who have missed out on the screenings. Is there a website? How can we get further information about Punjab Disappeared?
So punjabdisappeared.org is the website. Follow us on Missing Punjabis on Instagram and Punjab Disappeared again on Twitter.
Now, there's a basic question. What's the motivation behind its abductions, not only in India, but across India, in certain parts of India, and these group of people? What is the motivation behind it? Who's benefiting from this disappearance of these young men?
So I can speak for Punjab, for example. In Punjab, you had under the sort of guise of counterinsurgency operations, security forces were, as I mentioned, were given incentive to pick up and disappear and kill these young people, young and old actually, across the board. And when you incentivize people in that fashion and you give them a free run on, instead of arresting people, instead of going through correct legal processes, you have a opportunity to make some very quick money and be promoted very quickly up in the ranks, that you will find that, in these kind of situations.
So can I ask you as well, when you look at this structure and that you say that this is what's going on, what's the evidence of that happening? And isn't this an issue that could be addressed if this is what's happening? Is it alleged, or is it been proven, or is these incentives that you talk about for these individuals who are supposed to be policing and looking after those individuals, they are now in a process of genocide, of sort of form of a genocide that's going on towards a group of people? If this is an incentive going on, if this is going on within in any part of India or even Punjab, this is an international stage now that where we can then say, right, here's the evidence, this is what's going on. If this is going on, why aren't we hearing about it more often? And these incentives and all of that, why aren't we hearing about these?
So our case at the moment is of 8,257 individuals who we say are disappeared and killed.
Right.
We have filed that case in front of the Supreme Court of India, and that case is now in front of the courts.
Right.
So we have collated the information. We've put together a legal case, and that is currently in front of the courts. So the answer to that question of what is behind this, where have these people gone? And we talked earlier about why is it important? Why does it remain important today? For the families in Punjab who their loved ones have been taken, they have still unanswered questions.
So again, the question is, if the authorities have put this kind of practice into place, where's the evidence of this is actually happening from these authorities? If we are accusing the police of working in this way with the government saying, here you go, this is your powers, go and do what you have to do, forget about the law, you've got this rights. Where is that evidence? Is that been presented to the High Court? Is this what we're going to see come out when we are going to see these court cases come to the hearing?
So the evidence in Punjab is that while these things were going on, it was reported in the newspapers. It was very much an open secret that, yes, we are being incentivized. This is a process, and it was called the catch, kill, bounty sort of system, and it wasn't like something that was hidden.
Right.
So it came out into the public, and in fact, what you have now and what our film covers is that these police officers who say we witnessed these things.
Yes.
So those things are now coming, and you can't really go through any newspaper in Punjab over probably even a year without one of these stories coming out. And you have also people who are allegedly killed, and bounties have been claimed, and now they're coming in front of the courts and saying, actually, I'm that individual. I don't know who was killed, but I need security because I'm unsure.
Wow.
So it's not secretive in that way.
Anyone who's listening to this right now might be thinking, hold on a minute, if this is a clear cut is happening, then it's an easy case, isn't it? Why does it have to take so long? But you're saying it's not as... It's even more easier because it's actually been reported on. The individuals who did these acts have come forward and given testimony and looking for protection themselves. And if we are looking for justice, what is the justice for these families? And how does India even rub this stain off from its, law and its protection of the people? I mean, how does anyone recover from it? How does a country recover from that?
As far as justice for the families, up until today, if a simple question hasn't been answered, what has happened to our loved ones, justice is a long process.
Okay.
So if you deny, we haven't got your son, we don't know what happened.
Right.
That's where these families have been. And if you have 100 families, for example, maybe one or two will able to pursue it legally.
Right.
So even the cases that were going through the courts were delayed to such a degree. So you have 20, 22 years, 25 years of delay as part of that process. So, I don't know what justice will be for those families, is my honest answer. But this is a process, and it's a long process. And to acknowledge in the first place that this person has been taken. We've gone into villages and we've talked to mothers who say, 20, 25 years ago, my young son was taken. I still believe he may come back. If you have no one's acknowledged that they were taken, you've never seen a dead body, they've been cremated secretively, then I don't know what justice looks like for those families, but they continue to ask the question.
If you're watching into BBC Radio London and you'd like further details on this particular film, the documentary is called Punjab Disappeared. You can go to punjabdisappeared.org. I'd like to find out a little bit more about you as well, Jaswant Kaur, because clearly you're really passionate about this. We mentioned earlier on you're a human rights lawyer, your husband is a barrister, you're from London. Has this completely transformed your life and way of life, taking on a project like this and leaving your country?
So I'm a human rights advocate and I'm a filmmaker now. And yes, it has. You do take yourself away from where you are born and raised. And we initially started the project 10 years ago. So it's been a 10-year project. But initially we were coming and going, but that was not sustainable. We spent the first 4 years sort of coming back to the UK, working here, then going out and coming back and, and so forth. But it got to a head where we thought, if we don't go back and do this now, those questions will never be answered. If those questions are never asked, then the families will never even have an opportunity to have their cases documented. We've gone to people's houses in villages where no one's even ever asked them what happened. Wow. Forget legal cases, forget it being reported in any significant way. These families have just never been asked that question, well, what happened in your house?
What would you like to happen next then? You've had quite a response. If we just bring it here to London for a moment, we mentioned earlier on there's been screenings at Waterman Centre in Brentford, also Stratford Circus in East London, which have completely sold out. People have obviously been waiting for this documentary to be released, and the response is such that you are hopefully going to be having more screenings in the coming months as well. What would you like to see happen next as a filmmaker?
So we have had a huge response, and in fact, the tickets sort of sold out within 48 hours in some places. And when you make a film like this, you're never sure about the response.
Exactly.
And we've been so overwhelmed by that. I mean, we had our showing in Amritsar on Sunday, gone, and again a full house, an amazing response. We showed it in Delhi, we showed it in Chandigarh, we came to the UK, we showed it here, and then we went back to Amritsar with it.
And when you had these screenings, what were the audience like? I mean, what's the reaction? Were they like, about time, or this is happening? What was the reaction from the audience, from each one of these places?
So in Delhi, when we showed it, I mean, it was, I think there's a new generation who has absolutely no idea these things happened. And, the film, while it does cover Punjab and these other states where it continues to happen, I think just the enormity of what happened in Punjab remains, elusive to a lot of people. And I think when we went to Chandigarh, for example, we had a lot of young people from Chandigarh who said, actually, I live in Punjab, I've grown up here, and I don't even know about this. And then obviously you have the other side of that is people who are directly affected, who, come and watch the film, who are families of the disappeared. And obviously their engagement with the film is totally different. Even in the UK, we came, and I don't think there was any showing that we had where an individual didn't come up to us and share a story of either a relative in Punjab who has disappeared or, something that they'd experienced themselves. So it's actually much larger, and we're saying 8257. We're not saying that's the final number. We're saying we've gone into 14 districts in Punjab, and there's a huge amount of documentation that still needs to be done.
Jaswant, it's been such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
And, genuinely a lot of respect for you, as we say, to kind of up sticks and move to another country and really highlight something clearly quite personal to you as a Punjabi as well. We'd like to follow the journey. Can we get you back in a couple of months and find out what happens next?
We'd love to do that.
So if you'd like further details for the documentary, it's called Punjab Disappeared. That's punjabdisappeared.org.